you won't be able to sleep tonight. At least that's according to these animations. So let's see if that's true. So today the animations are brought to you by SSG Animations, and let's get into it. Go check out their channel though if you want to see more of these animations.
That night was colder than I expected for Valentine's Day.
Oh,
I
it's
had stopped by
Valentine's
Richard's
Day.
house to help him with a quick errand before he went to meet Tanya in the plaza. They hadn't been able to see each other because they were too busy, but they wanted to see each other to give each other Valentine's Day gifts and to spend the evening together.
Also, give me 1 second. I need my soda. I need my soda. I'm running out of my root beer. Was that ASMR for you? Was that some good ASMR? Anyways, fit check. I know you can't see it, but this is a Ryan Caraveo hoodie. Ryan Caraveo. If you know who Ryan Caraveo is, you're awesome. He's like, I met him in one of his concerts and absolutely love that man. He's been my favorite musician for a while now. And I actually got to meet him. It was like one of my bucket list things like I had to do before I died, and I actually got to meet him. Anyways, let's continue.
He was a nice guy, Richard. He always talked about Tanya as if she was the piece that made his life complete. I never
I feel like this is gonna be a yandere type thing.
fully understood that relationship, but it wasn't my place to get involved. I didn't want to bother them.
True
I
that.
just wanted to accompany my friend, say goodbye to Tanya, and leave. He was excited to surprise her. The walk to the square was quiet.
What is this background music? It sounds like they're either about to kill a bunch of vampires or murder this poor woman.
We talked about the usual, sports, work, and stuff like that. Richard was so animated that he didn't even notice how I couldn't help but think how empty the city was for a Sunday night. When we arrived, the place was no different. A few lights
Or are they gonna get murdered? Or are they gonna murder him? Maybe they're serial killer lovers. Maybe that's what it is.
illuminated the benches and trees, but there was hardly anyone in sight. Stay a while. You'll keep me company until Tanya arrives. We sat on a bench near the bridge
You are a grown man. You do not need my company. You're fine, dude.
while we waited for Tanya. It was then that everything started to feel weird. The place was empty for a long time. We were talking when I saw it. Someone was coming towards us, but it wasn't Tanya. It was a tall guy wearing a black sports jacket, walking slowly through the trees. There was no reason to notice him at first, but then I realized that his steps were too calculated, as if he didn't want to lose sight of what we were doing. Do you know him? Richard shrugged, playing it down. Probably someone out for a walk.
Richard's gonna murder him. I already know it. It's right there. Richard. Come on. If your name's Richard, that automatically makes you a serial killer. Sorry. I don't make the rules.
But the man was still there, closer now, pretending to look at his phone as he approached one of the benches. I tried to ignore him. It was easy to think I was overreacting, but my gut kept screaming that something was wrong. Richard, oblivious, pulled out his phone and started texting. He must be letting Tanya know he's arrived, I thought. That's when the guy looked up and his eyes met mine. His expression was scary. He seemed
What's that camera zoom in? What is this? What is this?
intent on something. He looked at us with a determination that terrified me as he slowly approached us. What time is it? His voice was low, almost monotonous. Richard answered but did not get up. I, for my part, preferred not to say anything. The guy stood in front of us for a moment that seemed longer than it was. Then, without another word, he turned and started walking to the other side of the park. But he didn't leave. He just hovered, like a predator waiting for just the right moment to strike. Minutes later, Richard received a phone call from Tanya. He stood up smiling. I'm going to look for her on the other side of the bridge. Are you coming or staying here? I had no reason to stay, so I followed him. We walked together down the dark path while I looked out the corner of my eye looking for the guy we...
What if that creepy guy is just like a scapegoat in the story, making us think that we need to fear that creepy guy, but we really actually need to fear Richard and Tanya?
had seen earlier. And there he was. He hadn't left. He was still a few...
Is he catfishing? Is he catfishing this dude, making him think that he's Tanya? Not like, not like they haven't met before, but like he killed Tanya, took her phone, and then is now trying to kill them. But why would you do that? I feel like that's not very smart.
Meters behind us, with his hands in his pockets and his head bowed as if he were trying to go unnoticed. It's that guy again? He just laughed. What do you think he's going to do, rob us? There are two of us. No matter how big he is, he doesn't stand a chance. Richard seemed pretty sure of himself. That's good, because I was not. We got to the bridge, but no one was there. Richard checked his phone, frowning. Tanya said she'd be here. Just then, we heard rapid footsteps behind us. I turned just in time to see the man approaching at full speed. Before I could react, I felt a sharp blow to my head that
What
left
the
me
fuck?
dazed. My vision blurred as I fell to the ground,
No!
unable to move. From there, everything became blurry, as if time had slowed down. Still on the ground, I watched as the man grabbed Richard by the neck, throwing him.
Okay, I'm gonna pause right there because I have a little story time to tell you. I saw the blood dripping from the back of his head, and I just thought of an interesting story to tell you. When I was younger, I actually broke my head open. So I lived up in like the mountains or whatever, and I was climbing an aspen tree, and I saw Tangled recently, and you know that scene where she just gets down from the tower with her hair, and she's so close to touching the grass, but she's like a little hesitant because she's never touched grass before. That's so funny. And you know, she's just waiting, and then she finally touches it. I was recreating that scene, but I did it hanging from a tree branch, and the tree branch was like, I can't hold your weight, bitch, and so it snapped, and I fell to the ground, and I hit my head on a rock. And then from then on, I had dozens of friends that I talked to every day. I don't know how they correlate with each other, but also I got these pretty rad staples in my head, but those got taken out, and now I just have like this really like paper white scar in the back of my head that sometimes you can see when I split my hair down the middle. It's pretty gnarly. It didn't hurt me, as far as I know. I just started bleeding profusely because, you know, the head bleeds a lot. I actually didn't bleed that much for a head injury, which was surprising, but I was also only like, I was really young. I was probably like 8 years old when this happened. Yeah. Maybe none of this is real. What if I died? Like, what if I hit my head hard enough to where I actually am dead right now and I'm just hallucinating all of this and you guys aren't real? We need to continue.
Against one of the bridge columns. Richard tried to defend himself, but he didn't have a chance. The guy was stronger, and each blow he gave him was harder and more hateful than the last. I tried to scream, but my voice was barely a whisper. I struggled to get up, but
What if Tanya hired this guy to do this to them because she wanted to break up with Richard, but she just didn't know how to say it?
pain in my head was unbearable. I could only watch as Richard tried to escape, as he tried to use his arms to block the attacks, but the man would not stop. The last blow was the strongest. Richard fell to the ground, and the man pulled something out of his pocket.
If he had the gun the whole time, why not just pull it out right away?
He aimed without hesitation and fired several times. Everything went silent after that. I thought he was going to come after me, but instead he put the gun away and looked around. Some people had run out when they heard the gunshots, but no one came back to help. The man was lost in the darkness, leaving Richard lying on the ground. It took me a few minutes to regain my mobility. When I finally got up, I ran to Richard. His body was cold, motionless. There was nothing.
I'm glad they black and whited that, because demonetization, even though I haven't even been monetized. Soon though, guys.
Nothing I could do for him. Sirens began to wail in the distance, but the man was already gone. The police arrived quickly, but their efficiency was questionable. They asked me questions, too many, as I tried to explain what little I had seen. I had no idea who the attacker was or why he had done such a thing. All I knew was that Richard was dead and that nothing would ever be the same. The officers sealed off the area, but the answers didn't come. I felt helpless, carrying guilt that I didn't know if it was mine. Should I have insisted on leaving earlier? Would it have made a difference if I had? It was weeks before anything more was known about the case. The police discovered that the man who killed Richard was not a random stranger. His name was Reginald Coleman, a guy who had been hired by someone close to him to do the dirty work. The revelation came as a rude shock. Tanya had planned the whole thing. She had hired Coleman to get rid of her husband and collect the life insurance.
Wait, they were hubbies? They were hubbies? I thought they were just dating. I guess I missed that. That's just like, then why didn't they live together? Why were they meeting at the park? See, there's so many unanswered questions.
I would have never imagined that someone so close to Richard could betray him like that.
Was bro rich or something? Because, I guess he had life insurance. I thought never mind.
What hurt the most was remembering how Richard spoke of Tanya with such love. He had no idea what she was doing behind his back.
How's he spraying that perfume if his finger's not on the thing?
How she was planning his death while he was trying to surprise her with a gift. Tanya was arrested and convicted, as was Coleman. But that didn't bring justice, at least not for me. Every time I walk by the park, I feel an emptiness in my stomach, a reminder of what happened that night.
Why even go to the park? Or like, why even be near that park? I'm sorry, but if something that traumatic happened, I'm moving across the country, moving to another country. I'm going to Ireland at that point.
Richard was a good guy, and he didn't deserve that ending. I keep wondering if I could have done something to prevent it, but I know those questions lead nowhere. All of that remains now are the memories, the scars, and the bitter certainty that some people are capable of the most terrible things for little money. The park is still there. Empty,
well, obviously.
Just like that night. Sometimes I think of Richard sitting on that bench, waiting for Tanya, not knowing that his life was about to end. And I wonder if I will ever be able to stop.
Okay, so a nice little, I guess, silver lining from this, which is sad to say, he didn't know that Tanya betrayed him. He died loving her fully, thinking that she was the perfect woman to him. And there's something, I guess, bittersweet about that, because he died, loving her. He didn't know that she betrayed him, and I think that's kind of sweet. But F that woman for what she did. That is terrible.
Stop reliving that moment. This story is based on the real case of Reginald Coleman, who was convicted for the murder of Richard Shoke on Valentine's Day, 2010. The crime took place at Belton Bridge Park in Hall County, Georgia, where Richard Shoke was found shot to death. Investigations revealed that the murder was the result of a contract killing orchestrated by Shoke's wife, Tanya Shoke, who conspired with her co-worker, Lenitra Ross, and hired Reginald Coleman to carry out the murder. Reginald Coleman was arrested and charged with malice murder and 2 counts related to gun possession in connection with the alleged contract killing. He pleaded guilty to malice murder and was sentenced to life without parole. I've worked at Burger King for 2 years. Most shifts...
I've worked at Burger King for 2 years. No! I can't. Okay. I was in shock because typically when they say true horror stories, it's like they say something that happens but they have no evidence to back it up. They're like, the sources trust me, bro. But they came with their sources. They showed us the pictures. They were caught in whatever picture quality that was. It wasn't 4K, I know that for sure. It was in 2010. 4K wasn't as popular back then. I don't know if it even existed back then. I was 5. Anyway, holy damn, that made me really, really sad when they showed the pictures and everything. And then all of a sudden, I worked at Burger King for 2 years. Oh god, is this how this is gonna be? Are they gonna show us the actual story behind each of these? Because that is just so sad, and I don't know if I want to show that. I don't know if I should keep that in the video or not, because that kind of does just make things really, really sad. I'm gonna cut out every future one of the whole, like, things where they show the true story behind it, okay?
Are uneventful. Cleaning tables, flipping burgers, and occasionally dealing with a rude customer. That night, though, was different. That night, I saw something I'll never forget. It was a slow evening with barely anyone coming in. My manager, Peter, sent me to clean the women's restroom.
What's up with his eyes? He's looking in two different places. Part of him wants to look at your chesticles, and the other part's looking you in the eye. Okay.
It's my least favorite task, but someone has to do it. I grabbed the mop and the cleaning supplies and headed inside. The restroom was empty, just like the dining area. The overhead light flickered slightly.
Wait, why are you cleaning the men's? Why not clean the women's? Be like, you're a dude, why don't you go clean the men's, dude? I don't get paid enough for this bullshit.
Kind of thing you'd see in a cheap horror movie.
Okay.
I ignored it and got to work, mopping the floor and wiping down the sinks. Everything was routine. Until it wasn't. I was scrubbing one of the stalls when I heard it. A scream. A man's scream coming from one of the cubicles. At first I froze. The sound didn't make sense. This was the women's restroom. I was sure of it.
Wait, then why did it say that you were in the men's? I'm confused here. Also, why is it loading? I just paused it.
I'd just checked the sign before entering. Slowly, I turned toward the stalls, my grip tightening on the mop handle. Hello?
If you need to, take the mop, break it over your knee, and use it as like a little stabby, okay?
Oh? My voice barely came out. I took a step back, my eyes darting toward the exit. Another scream echoed through the room,
Girl room.
Louder this time. It wasn't a cry for help. It was angry, primal, like an animal caught in a trap. My pulse skyrocketed. I wanted to run, but my legs felt heavy, like they were stuck in wet cement. The sound of a door unlocking snapped me out of it. One of the stall doors swung open violently. A man stumbled out, his clothes disheveled and
Is
his
he wearing
face
heels?
contorted with rage.
Sorry.
His eyes locked onto me, and for a moment, we just stood there staring at each other. Then he charged.
Telling you, break the mop over your knee, pull out some cool moves, and he's gonna be running scared. Pretend, like, fake it till you make it. Maybe, I don't know, I'm scared.
I didn't have time to think. He lunged at me, his hands outstretched. I barely managed to duck, the mop slipping from my grasp. He slammed into the sink behind me, but that didn't slow him down. He turned, his eyes wild, and came at me again. I scrambled backward, my foot catching on the edge of the mop bucket.
I would have just grabbed that mop bucket and swung it at him.
I fell hard, my head smacking against the tile floor. Pain shot through my skull, but I couldn't stop to process it. He was already on top of me, his hands...
I heard of this true crime case where this guy, so it was the Texas Arcana murders or something like that. Texan Arcana murders. And pretty much this guy had been like thrown on the ground and he hit his head so hard that it broke his skull. And people said that it sounded like a gunshot. And that to me is just so scary and gross. But he still managed to get up and go get some help after that. That man had like adrenaline coursing through his freaking everything, dude. But just that thought of like a skull breaking sounds like a gunshot. Oh my god.
clawing at my arms as I tried to push him away. "Get off me!" I screamed, kicking at his legs. My heel connected with his knee, and he let out a guttural growl. It wasn't enough to stop him, though. He grabbed my wrist and slammed it against the floor. I felt something crack, and a sharp, searing pain shot up my arm. Just when I thought he was going to kill me, he stopped. His face twisted in frustration, and he let out an angry roar. Just as suddenly as he'd attacked, he stood up and stormed out of the restroom. I lay there for a moment, gasping for air, my entire body trembling. My wrist throbbed and my head was pounding, but I was alive. Somehow, I was alive. The sound of glass shattering snapped me out of my daze. I forced myself to sit up, every movement sending waves of pain through my body. Outside the restroom, I could hear yelling and the sound of things breaking. The man was still here, and he was tearing the place apart. I crawled to the door, my heart racing. Peeking out, I saw him in the middle of the dining area.
Wait, why is there a window in the bathroom? That's not very realistic, and this guy just looks absolutely disgusting and atrocious. I hate him.
He was throwing chairs, smashing tables, and shouting incoherently. One of the security guards tried to intervene, but the man grabbed him by the collar and threw him against the counter like he weighed nothing.
What security guards are you talking about? And why does it look like they're working at Subway, not Burger King?
Co-workers were screaming, some of them hiding behind the counters while others bolted for the exits. I wanted to run too, but my body wouldn't cooperate. I was frozen, watching the chaos unfold like it was some kind of twisted nightmare. I finally mustered the courage to move, crawling toward the emergency exit at the back of the kitchen. My wrist was useless, and every step felt like a marathon, but I had to get out of there. I was almost to the door when I heard heavy footsteps behind me. I turned just in time to see the man charging at me again. He tackled me to the ground, his hands wrapping around my throat. I clawed at his arms, gasping for air, but he was too strong. My vision started to blur, and I thought this was it. This was how I was going to die. Then, out of nowhere, Peter and two of my co-workers appeared. They grabbed the man, trying to pull him off me. He let go of my throat and turned on them, swinging wildly. Peter took a punch to the jaw and went down hard, blood pouring from his mouth. My other co-workers didn't fare any better. One of them got slammed into the fryer station. The man turned back to me, his face twisted with rage. He raised his foot, aiming for my head. I closed my eyes, bracing for the impact.
I know this girl got, like, hit in the head by the tile, but where's the survival? Like, I guess her, because you know how they have fight, flight, or freeze. I think this girl's response is freeze, but I don't know. I don't think that would be me, because that just seems 10 times more scarier, just accepting it. I would fight back at this point. I mean, if I can't run, you're gonna have to fight.
The sound of sirens cut through the chaos.
But also her wrist is broken, so she's probably in a lot of pain. But adrenaline, man, where's your adrenaline at?
Before the man could bring his foot down, the front doors burst open and police officers stormed in. They shouted orders, their guns drawn. The man hesitated for a moment, then turned to face them. He let out another primal scream and charged at the nearest officer. A gunshot rang out, and he stumbled, clutching his shoulder. He didn't go down, though. It took 3 officers to finally wrestle him to the ground and handcuff him. I lay there coughing and gasping for air as the chaos slowly died down. The officers dragged the man outside, his screams fading into the night. My co-workers were battered and bloody, but alive. Somehow, we'd all survived. The Burger King was shut down for the rest of the night, and probably longer. The police took our statements, but none of us could explain what had happened. The man was a complete stranger. He didn't work there, and he hadn't ordered anything. He just appeared. I quit my job the next day. I couldn't walk back into that building, not after what had happened. I still don't know who that man was or why he did what he did. Maybe I never will. But sometimes, late at night, I can still hear his screams. It was supposed to be a quick stop. I was on my way back home after a long shift at the warehouse.
Are we on the next
back
story?
roads were faster, but completely isolated, surrounded by miles of forest. My car had been acting up for weeks, but I kept putting off the repairs.
Why are you going 90 miles per hour, dude? Or is that what's wrong with the car? Hold on. Oh no. Wait. Miles per hour? Excuse me?
That night, it finally gave out. I pulled over, the engine sputtering before it died completely. I cursed under my breath and grabbed my phone.
This guy has a funny face.
Typical. The last gas station I'd passed was at least 10 miles back, and walking didn't seem like an appealing option. I decided to check under the hood, even though I had no idea what I was looking for. A quick glance with a flashlight revealed nothing but the obvious. My car wasn't going anywhere. As I stood there, weighing my options, I noticed the faint glow of headlights approaching from behind. A beat-up truck slowed to a stop next to me.
That driver. Something ain't right about that.
The driver rolled down the window. He was an older man with a grizzled beard and a cigarette hanging from his lips. "You need help?" His voice was raspy, like he'd smoked a pack every day of his life. I hesitated, but nodded. "Yeah, my car broke down. Do you know if there's a mechanic nearby?" The man looked at me for a moment, then gestured to the passenger seat. "Hop in. I'll give you a ride." Against my better judgment, I got in. The inside of the truck smelled like sweat and stale smoke. He didn't say much as we drove, and I didn't ask any questions. The road seemed endless, the darkness outside swallowing everything. After about 20 minutes, the man slowed the truck and pulled onto a dirt path. I frowned. "I thought we were going to a city. You just skipped the last exit." He didn't answer. Instead, he parked in front of what looked like an abandoned building. The windows were boarded up, and the whole place seemed ready to collapse. "This doesn't look like..." Before I could finish, something hit me hard in the back of the head. My vision blurred as I felt myself being dragged out of the truck.
Wait, how did you get hit? Was the window down? Or did he hit you, but he hit you from the other side? I don't understand.
The walls were concrete, and the only light came from a flickering bulb overhead. My wrists were tied, and my head throbbed. Panic set in, and I realized I wasn't alone. The room was...
This guy's lack of nose is really getting to me. Like, he's supposed to have the bottom of his nose right here. Or like, bloop, you know what I mean? Where's the nose at?
Silent except for the faint hum of machinery. I struggled against the ropes, but they were tight. My captors, whoever they were, hadn't returned yet, and I had no idea how long I'd been unconscious. I scanned the room. There was a door on the far side, slightly ajar. Beyond it, I could hear faint voices. I waited for several minutes, listening. When it seemed cleared, I shuffled toward the door, using my shoulder to push it open. The hallway outside was dimly lit and cold. I moved cautiously, trying to ignore the pounding in my head. As I crept forward, the voices grew louder. They were coming from another room down the hall.
I've always wondered what that's like, because when I got my head injury, I didn't have like a throbbing pain in the back of my head or anything. Honestly, it didn't even hurt. I was crying because I was in such shock and I was bleeding from the head and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna die. Oh my god. Wait, if I can find the photo of me in the hospital when I got that head injury, please put it on the screen right now, editing Alexis, because it's such a funny photo.
The door was open just a crack, and I could see a faint red glow spilling out. Curiosity got the best of me.
Oh my god.
I peered through the gap and froze.
I have a question. If you got kidnapped like this and you see a red glowing light coming from a room, are you gonna peek in there, or are you gonna get the fuck out? Are you gonna peek, or are you gonna like be a little bit curious? Wait, that's the same thing. Are you gonna try to leave?
Inside, there were monitors lining the walls, showing live feeds of different rooms. Each screen displayed something horrific. People tied up, crying or screaming. A group of men in masks sat around a table.
They did not look like that, and they were not laughing like that. They... Oh god, these guys, I can't take them seriously. They don't look scary. They look like they're trying to be scary, but they don't look scary.
Watching the screens and laughing. One of them was holding a camera. This was no ordinary kidnapping. I backed away from the door, my heart racing. The realization hit me like a brick. This was a red room. One of those sick live streams where people paid to watch others get tortured or worse.
Oh my god, the stupid door. I'm gonna have to go fix that. It's annoying the shit out of me. If I get one more distraction in this freaking video, I'm going to shoot myself.
I needed to get out. Fast. I turned to head back the way I came, but nearly stumbled into one of the masked men. He looked at me, confused at first, then furious. He lunged, grabbing me by the arm. I fought back, slamming my fist into his face. He staggered, but his grip didn't loosen. The commotion alerted the others. The door to the red
Whoa!
room swung open, and the men inside spilled out. I twisted free from the first man and bolted down the hall, ignoring the pain in my legs.
Yeah, good.
They were
good.
shouting now, their footsteps echoing behind me. I ducked into another room and slammed the door shut.
Oh, then.
My hands fumbled
What if there's something even worse in that room?
for the lock. I could hear them outside, pounding on the door. The room was filled with equipment, computers, cameras,
Oh,
and cables.
okay, that's not too bad.
One of the monitors showed a live feed of the hallway I'd just come from. They were right outside. I needed a weapon. My eyes darted around the room until I spotted a metal pipe leaning against the wall. I grabbed it just as the door burst open. The first man came at me, and I swung the pipe with all of my strength. It connected with the shoulder, and he went down with a scream. Another one lunged at me, and I jabbed the pipe into his gut.
One of my favorite things in horror movies is the revenge arc, where the final girl gets her revenge. Like, if you've seen Ready or Not, love that. I love that. Or if you've seen Scream with Sydney, or with Billy's daughter, I forgot her name, Sam.
He doubled over, gasping for air. The others hesitated, clearly not expecting resistance. I used the moment to dart past them, back into the hallway. My leg was throbbing, and I realized I must have injured it during the struggle. I could hear them regrouping behind me, their shouts growing louder. I turned a corner and found a stairwell leading up. With no other option, I started climbing. The stairs led to another hallway, this one lined with more rooms. I tried the doors, but most were locked. At the end of the hall, I found one that opened. I slipped inside and locked it behind me. The room was small, with a single window covered by bars. I was trapped. My only hope was to barricade the door and pray they wouldn't get through. I pushed a heavy cabinet.
That's not gonna do shit, because if you guys are stuck in this room, and barricading the door isn't gonna do shit, because eventually they are going to break through. It's just a matter of when. That was terrible.
In front of it and collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. I could hear them outside, their voices muffled but angry. They were trying to break down the door. I needed to think fast.
If I was the guy on the outside, I'd just be like, "Hey, yo, idiot! You just locked yourself in there." Why was I gonna say that? But still, you get the idea.
My eyes landed on a vent in the ceiling. It was small, but I might be able to squeeze through.
Okay.
I climbed onto the cabinet
Where'd you get
and
the
started
screwdriver?
unscrewing the vent cover. The door behind me rattled as they tried to force it open. Just as I managed to remove the cover, the door gave way. They rushed in, but I was already halfway into the vent. One of them grabbed my leg, yanking me back. I kicked wildly, my boot connecting with his face. He let go, and I pulled myself the rest of the way in. The vent was narrow and suffocating, but it led me to another part.
And then they start putting something really bad in the vents. They put chloroform through the vent system.
Part of the building. I dropped down into a storage room and found a side door that led outside.
Oh, thank the Lord.
The cold night air hit me like a slap. I limped into the wood, my injured leg slowing me down. Behind me, I could hear them shouting, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. I don't know how long I ran before I collapsed. The last thing I remember was the sound of footsteps crunching through the leaves. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed.
How'd they find him?
A man in a police uniform sat beside me.
How come he
He
has a
told me
nose?
a ranger found me unconscious in the woods and brought me here.
A ranger?
I tried to explain what had happened,
Aren't
but he looked
aren't rangers only at like national parks?
skeptical. The same day, he came to the hospital to visit me. We sent officers to the location you described. There was nothing there, just an old abandoned building. I knew what I'd seen. Those men, that red room, it was real, but the evidence was gone, like it had never existed. The police assured me they'd keep investigating, but I could see in his eyes he didn't believe me. I don't know if they'll ever find those men or the horrors hidden in that building, but I do know one thing. They're still out there, waiting for their next victim.
That is just so sad because these things really do happen, and this is just supposed to be a happy go lucky time. But it was not. It was really sad. So that's all the scary animations that I'm gonna do for today, and honestly, it was kind of sad. I didn't like that. It made me. It hurt my heart a little bit, if I'm being honest. So I think in the future, I'm gonna try to stick to scary animations that are more paranormal focused because that just seems a lot better than what we just watched. So I'm sorry if this made you feel sad. Um, I love you guys and I hope you have a good day and be safe as always.